That's right. Stop what you're doing. We're not about to ruin anything. We're not ruining anything today because it is glorious. Kind of. It's Wednesday and it's beautiful outside. A little chilly, albeit, but from what we've been through and what you look at in the Northeast and everything else, you got to be somewhat happy about it. You can start to get that feel, can't you? You can get the feel of you've got the IHSAA girls basketball finals coming up this weekend. Sectionals for boys will be here before we know it. The sectionals haven't started yet, have they, Eddie? I probably should have checked that real quick. Know you guys just did the pairing show. But either way, March Madness is right on the horizon. And there's a ton to be excited about, including last night. And the glory continues for the Pacers. I've just resigned myself to it. The fact that now it is about being entertaining and competitive, but at the same time, keeping yourself in position for one of those top four picks. And last night, I don't even know if competitive would be the case, but it was entertaining at the Fieldhouse. So I'm at the Pacer game last night. And while I'm at the Pacer game, I'm thinking about what was said at the Combine by Chris Ballard at the podium, what was said by Shane Steichen with J&V. And I'll give J&V credit. I mean, Shane Steichen is a very good offensive football coach, and he is the perfect guy to basically, if you were somebody like in some sort of an office position and you needed a PR guy because you were running some sort of scheme that you wanted nobody to know what you were doing, you'd say, Shane Steichen, we're going to send you as our PR guy because you have the master way of answering things short and concise and masking the fact that you're saying absolutely nothing. And that kind of was the case yesterday at No Fault of John. The conversation with Steichen, while always a good conversation, it wasn't like there was the big nugget that came out of, oh, wow. That probably happened at this radio station with the Rick Carlisle comments about the NBA, and then that was carried over into Chris Ballard this morning. So you had this confluence of all of these things happening while I'm sitting there watching the Pacer game, and all of it's going through my mind. And then Jake Lewis, who was at the game with me, who's the pride of Carmel High School, Jake sitting next to me has his phone, and he's watching the end of the Indiana Northwestern game. So I watched that, and, we're thinking, no way. And I thought, well, there's another big one. So we will get to that as well, because there is a lot to discuss today. And the Indiana Northwestern game, I think, is as big as anything. But let's get to what is, anytime that they are in the news, it is always topical, and I'm talking about the Colts. And Chris Ballard on this morning with the guys from the morning show. And there are a number of things that Chris Ballard talked about yesterday at the podium. So Chris Ballard, who does not do a lot of media stuff, was available twice in the last 24 hours. The first of those being at the podium at the NFL Combine, and this is kind of it really is, for lack of a better or probably a bad timing analogy, the NFL Combine is where each and every franchise is allowed to give their State of the Union. It is the one time where the if you are covering the New Orleans Saints, you come to the NFL Combine because the general manager of the New Orleans Saints goes up on that little podium and holds court for 20 minutes with questions about the state of the Saints. And the same may happen a day later and an hour after that for the Cardinals, then the Vikings, whatever. Yesterday, it was the Colts' turn. And at the podium, Chris Ballard yesterday when talking about the masses, if you will, or talking to the masses, I should say, basically what he said, to paraphrase, he was asked about Anthony Richardson's eye injury and said, you know what, I'm really proud of Anthony Richardson, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit before we get into the nuances of things that he said this morning to this radio station. But when it came to Anthony Richardson, he essentially said, Anthony's come a long way on the eye injury. He's had a lot of bad luck with injuries. including this one, which was a freak accident. But I'm very proud of the way that he's worked back. I believe that he has a future in this league. Where that is or how that is, I don't know. You want to have the best players or as many of them as you can at all positions. But I don't know where things will go with Anthony, but I'm very proud of the way he's worked. Basically saying, I don't know whether or not I'm going to sell this car, but in the event I do, I got to let you know. Ever since we got the new transmission put in, it really is running great. It's basically what he's saying. He has to keep the value up there a little bit, and I understand that. He yesterday said that discussions are going well with Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones and their representatives about trying to retain them or carry them longer term as members of the Colts. And the thing that he pointed out both yesterday and today was it is always encouraging when the perception is there that all sides are working towards the same thing. And he indicated that that would mean that things are going very well with Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones. And I think he felt very good about where things are with those two players. For Richardson, he did say that he is, quote, trending in the right direction just in terms of getting out there and getting in position, even though he's been cleared now for football activity to where he would be able to go. But then he came on this morning out of the combine with the guys on the morning show, and they carried over, of course, into the show that follows them. And there were a couple of things that he had to say with that I found interesting. The first being this. I believe it was Kevin, and I don't want to misquote, but I'm going off of the way that the flow of the conversation was going because I can't recall which one it was specifically, but I think it was Kevin that asked Chris Ballard about leadership. And if you look at, if you look at this roster, leadership is an interesting thing. There are different ways to be a leader. You can be a leader by being vocal and saying, you need to do A, B, C, and D for me. And this is true in any walk of life. You can be a leader by simply being experienced and saying, my leadership ability is such that I'm not going to tell the person that needs to learn from me what they need to learn. I'm going to simply display it and allow them the personal growth to figure out what it is they need to take away from the way I'm doing things. There's also the leadership that's a little bit of both. I'm going to do this way, watch what I do, and learn from the things that I'm doing, and also make note of the things I do that are mistakes. And for the Colts, there are times where you have, and I think this is a real problem that the Colts have had within their locker room. I think leadership is a real problem they've had. And, of course, it begins with this. With any football team, I don't care whether you're talking about the Jordan Y, CYO, Perry Meridian High School, Stony Brook Middle School, Indiana University, or the Colts. With any football team, naturally speaking, the quarterback is seen, even if it's a player literally that you picked up at 7-Eleven on the way to the game. The quarterback is naturally the player that is, by default, one that the roster looks towards for leadership because they're the ones that are vocalizing what play is going to be run, and also they touch the football every possession. So too does the center. That's it. But the quarterback is the one that then is the ultimate decider and makes the determining factor of where things go. One of the problems the Colts have had is they have not had a leader at quarterback in quite some time. Because you can have it with a veteran player like a Matt Ryan or a Phillip Rivers, except for that everybody in the locker room knows those guys are rentals. And you can learn from it, don't get me wrong, but does a young player really think, like, I really need to be on board with what old man Rivers is saying? Because that player is going to think to themselves, in 2 years, he ain't even going to be here. Joe Flacco, the same. But the biggest problem where the Colts erred was handing the keys to Anthony Richardson too early. Not only was that a disservice to Anthony Richardson, but it was a disservice to the rest of the locker room because the position that, naturally speaking, should be one that is being filled by a leader was being filled by somebody who was looking to be led. And that creates a complete breakdown of communication and execution when the person that should be the one that is at the front of the whole thing driving it is instead the one that is getting on the entrance towards the back of the bus and looking left or right to see where there might be an open seat. And that's no fault of Anthony Richardson's. He is a young player, still is, but when they got him was a very young player that was too much to ask. Even Peyton Manning, and the year that Peyton Manning was drafted as a rookie, he was not a great player as a rookie because he was still learning all of the things, but he did lead to an extent by the example of the very first quote when he signed his contract of, what are you going to do with all that money? And his answer was, I'm going to earn it. I'm going to earn it. So he set the tone right there for Adam Meadows and for other players that had Marshall Faulk that were veterans that he was inheriting. Hey, at least you know that I know what the intention is or what the expectation is of me. So they're in a situation now where Daniel Jones is a guy who has been a leader. He was a leader in New York because he was the quarterback for multiple years there. And he has that quality about him here, don't get me wrong. And I do think that he has a confidence about him that locker room appreciates and that locker room fed off of. No question. But he was airdropped in August or July. And so as a result of that, I don't know that he necessarily right away was able to get to know his teammates to the point of them figuring out all of the nuances. That is something that will develop and continue to grow. But there is no doubt, if you look at the way that the Colts have played and the way that they have handled and responded to adversity over the last handful of seasons, that they were a bunch of players that were looking to be led. DeForest Buckner is a leader. There's no doubt. But DeForest Buckner also, for a lot of time, at no fault of his, because of injury, was not around to be doing that leading. Zaire Franklin. Is Zaire Franklin a leader? He has been a captain for all 4 years he was in college. He's a respected guy and a very likable personality and a charitable guy and a guy that put up huge statistics. But I think where Zaire Franklin erred is towards the end of a season where he had huge numbers, but the team had fallen short. The team had fallen short. And yet, he was utilizing his podcast and social media platforms away from football to lobby for himself for the Pro Bowl. Understood. Personal goals, important. I get it. But there also is an element of reading the room when you have a franchise and a team that were mired in a disappointment and falling short of the measuring stick. And yet you're saying, yeah, but I could be a Pro Bowler. That right there is probably somebody that erred in the terms of how he wanted to be a leader. But all of those factors, the question, and I believe, as I said, it was Kevin that asked it, but the question was asked to Chris Ballard. In fact, Chris, is there a leadership problem? Are you lacking leaders on the Indianapolis Colts?
That's a fair question. Shane and I we've had discussions about that. Because we have really, look, y'all go through our locker room. We have really good dudes. They care. They want to win. They do everything they can in their power to do the right things. We have to make sure that they're getting, leaders, we got to help them lead sometimes, if that makes sense. We all have growth to do, even I have growth to do in that area, and they do. And we need to help them grow along the way, too, of things that we want done to make sure that is getting spread through the locker room. I think Shane does a really good job now, but, just at this time, because of the results, it hadn't been what we wanted. So we've got to make sure that we're leading them in the right direction, too.
You expect Zaire Franklin back?
We'll see. Love Zaire. I think, like my relationship with him, he's very honest and he's very strong-willed. Darius was very similar, Leonard. And usually good players are like that. So we'll see how it plays out. When football, I'll tell you this, when football's over, Zaire Franklin's going to be a star in whatever he decides to do in life. He is smart. He is extremely mentally tough. He's everything you want in a player in terms of makeup.
Are you a fan of the podcast?
Needless to say, Zaire and I have had some discussions about the podcast. Look, here's what I do like. I love that he's passionate about what could be next in life.
Okay, I promise. I promise right here. I'm trying my hardest, Eddie. I'm trying my hardest to be a patient guy, an understanding guy. I am smart enough to know. I'm smart enough to know right now at 12:16 in the afternoon on the 25th day of February of 2026. I'm smart enough to know that on a beautiful day like this, on a day when we are very fortunate to do what we do for a living, on a day in the best city in the land that people are living and that we have a lot of things in this city to be happy about. I'm smart enough to know that the last thing people want when they're on their way to lunch right now, or when they're listening in their car or in their office or wherever it may be, the last thing they want is to turn on the radio and just hear on this glorious, sunny, blue-skied day some guy being Debbie Downer, rainstorm, rain cloud, yell at everything all the time. I understand it, right? We've been there. But having said all of that, I am so tired of hearing, for example, right there with Chris Ballard, it's cue the same thing over and over. Get into a kind of an uncomfortable situation, make a joke and laugh and giggle uncontrollably, and then show some sort of humility of, I still have places to grow. We all have places to grow. We all do, right? I'm 53. I thought when I was 25, I knew everything. I look at it now and I'm like, I didn't know anything. And I'm sure when I'm 80, I'll look back, God willing, and say, I didn't know anything when I was 53. Life is an ongoing process. But the thing throughout different stages in life that separate some people from others is there are those positions where they are being filled by people that you anticipate and understand. While, yes, there is an ongoing process of growth, at some point you show that you have figured out what it is that you are to do. And in this situation, 10 years into it, I'm going to be humble when I need to be humble, and I'm going to be gruff and arrogant all other times, especially when things aren't going well. It just wears me out. I have nothing against Chris Ballard as a person. I don't know Chris Ballard as a person. I know him professionally speaking, and professionally speaking, there are elements that I respect, and there are elements that frustrate me. And I think I speak for this city. I think I speak for this fan base when I say, even if, and I can appreciate the humility of, I'm still learning on the job, please be patient. Even with that, I think this fan base deserves better than that after 10 years of complete mediocre crap, which is what it's been. It's the same old song and dance. It's the same old song and dance. And so you think to yourself, okay, bring back Daniel Jones, bring back Alec Pierce, bring back Zaire Franklin, let's go. Are we really convinced that it's going to get any better than it was towards the middling of last year, just before Daniel Jones got hurt? Because I got news for you. I'm not saying he can't come back from it, but the Achilles for Daniel Jones was not necessarily the tendon that ended up ending his year. The Achilles for Daniel Jones was he couldn't handle straight line pressure heat, and Pittsburgh wrote the blueprint on it and sent it to the rest of the league on a fax and said, here you go. Here's how you beat Indianapolis. And it took people a while to figure that out. But once they did, man, did that ground get shaky. We might as well have been on the San Andreas Fault because it was like, whoa, things are getting shaky. And the injury probably, and it's a terrible thing to happen, don't get me wrong, to any athlete. And I think Jones is a good player. But I think he's a good player that now has his work cut out for him because they were just starting to expose what it is that makes him go from a good player to an average player. And this roster isn't good enough to get away with having one of its key components be an average player. This roster has too much average throughout the rest of it to be led by anything other than very good to exceptional. And so when you're asked about it, to just be like, well, it takes time and we're learning. You know what doesn't take time? When, like, the season ticket holders get their application in the mail and it says, you know what, you got 90 days to let us know whether you're in or out. Give me some time. We're making some changes around the house, and I'm looking at different things for my job. So I'll let you know. Give me till next year, and then I'll let you know. No, we need to know now. NFL, baby, not for long. Not for long. We'll get plenty into and more in-depth with things that were said by Chris Ballard. Some good. I'm not – listen, again, I don't want to be that guy. I don't. I promise you all, I don't. But then there are other things that just kind of poke the bear, like, for example, what happened last night in Bloomington. What happened last night in Bloomington. You want to talk about same old song and dance. Before the game, 3 minutes till tip. 3 minutes till tip. And I get sent a picture of Assembly Hall. You can even see on the clock, 3 minutes till tip. It's like 60% full. Hey, but dude, by the time the game started, it filled up. Okay, the balconies were empty. And, again, scattering of empty seats throughout. But I understand it. Because how many times can we do this? How many times with Indiana, and I'm guilty as charged, can we say, you know what, things are going in the right direction? I said, and maybe blame me. I said on the air earlier this week, I think Monday, I said, Indiana, unless the rails come off, you got to give them credit because they've worked their way into the tournament. They might win a tournament game, and that was the goal for the year. Well, lo and behold, did they take that and just throw that out the window? They've lost 6 straight games to Northwestern. Everybody has seen the classic Bob Knight clip. One of the classics from Ed Sorensen, where Ed's asking Knight a question, and Knight doesn't like it and takes off his lav mic, the little clip-on mic on his collar, takes it off, grabs Ed's arm, and starts wrapping the cord around it and says, see, you people from television are all the same. You ask me a question, you don't like the answer to the question, then don't ask me the question. And he's going, I don't think you have your relative lack of knowledge is illuminated by that question, and I don't think you TV people aren't qualified to talk basketball with me. And he's wrapping the mic around Ed's arm, and Ed's going, sir, but you beat him by 50 points, and you struggle up there. What he's talking about was Indiana struggling in a game at Northwestern because that was unthinkable. And I know it was 40 years ago. I get it. But it's not like Northwestern this year. This is not meme of crying kid from the NCAA tournament Northwestern. This is a sub-500 Northwestern that came in and beat Indiana for the 6th consecutive time in Assembly Hall in front of a less than sold-out crowd at Assembly Hall. And I'm just going to have to wake myself up. I got to set my alarm on the iPhone and say, Jake, wake up. It's 2026. You're living in the past, brother. You're sitting here thinking that the banners matter, and you're thinking that kids that are coming to Indiana from places elsewhere outside of the state of Indiana and are coming here because they're a trust fund kid from the East Coast, and this is their fun summer getaway camp for 4 years where their parents can say they went away to college before they came back and took over the company, and they have no idea. They have no idea the history of Indiana basketball. I get it. But the lack of enthusiasm for that basketball program is not only disappointing, but it's also understandable. Because what are we working on now? 2 straight decades of the same false hope and promises, the same crap over and over. Boy, these guys are really playing hard. They practice hard, and they looked outstanding against some team that is probably going to go 11-28 in some lower tier, but they beat them by 40 in November. Great. What are you doing in the Big Ten? That was a terrible performance down the stretch. And yes, you can say all you want about the fact that Tucker DeVries might have been fouled on that last play. Guess what? You're playing at home against a team that is sub 500, that is towards the bottom of your conference, and everyone and their brother knows that you need a win to be able to right yourself after getting blown out by your rival and trying to get things on the rails for the NCAA tournament, and you come out with that. It's on you if you put it in the hands of the Zebras. That's 100% on you. And Lamar Wilkerson sounded frustrated and incredulous. I think the fan base is frustrated and incredulous. And I guess it's all good news because it gives us something to talk about till spring football starts. Congratulations, Indiana. You've become Alabama, except for that they've got a good basketball program. But Jeff Rabjohns on what went wrong last night joins us on the other side. Big show lined up over the course of today as well. Jolie Erickson also going to join us to talk about the Colts. We'll get more into what Chris Ballard had to say earlier today. But when we return, what was it that went wrong, and did that start to put the dirt on Indiana basketball, or can they come back out of it? We'll talk to Rabjohns about it next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripes. Surfside iced tea and vodka. Lemonade and vodka. Or the half and half, which is iced tea and lemonade with vodka in it. And new flavors out as well. Blueberry lemonade is outstanding. The raspberry tea, one of my favorites. Green tea as well. And then, of course, just the straight lemonade. But either way, no matter which one you're enjoying, you're getting a refreshment with just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, and no carbonation. So that means no bubbles and incredibly smooth and easy to drink. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages, but please be 21 and consume responsibly.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, Eddie, I'm going to make a statement before we bring on Jeff Rabjohns, and then I want you to grade me. I want you to tell me how, like, shock jock, bring the torch to the party level ridiculous it sounds. Because I'm saying it with, like, 85% flippancy and 15% like, things that make you go, You ready?
Yep.
Over the last quarter century, Indiana basketball, as we know, has been living largely off of its very, very firm foundation. But we have seen a series of coaching hires, some of which have gone better than others, some of which have peaked at better places than others, some of which have been more consistent than others. But with hearing Indiana basketball fans talk about, like, which coach was the one that I hate to say most damaged, because they all brought positive things and are all, by and large, pretty good men. But between Mike, it was like Mike Davis, that hurt the culture of Indiana with everything that went on there, even though I think they should actually have a statue for the guy with everything he went through and the grace with which he handled himself. Archie Miller, was that the bad hire of Archie Miller? How much did that set them back? And then Mike Woodson and Kelvin Sampson and everything that was done. And all these coaches that you can point to that were the ones that were the key cogs in slowing down the wheel of Indiana basketball. And I look at it and I say, maybe the one that threw the brakes on it, maybe the coach that most did is Curt Cignetti. Maybe Curt Cignetti is the coach that most put the brakes in Indiana basketball and the enthusiasm and the passion for it. Your thoughts?
I think, now for sure, but I don't know. I think it's just been a compilation of things over the years, and Cignetti and the success for IU football has just kind of put it over the edge a little bit.
Yeah. And I say that again with flippancy, but at the same time, I do find it curious because there is, and understandably so, there's just such the enthusiasm and love for the football program that I'm not going to say there's a complacency about it from the basketball standpoint, but simply maybe not as much the urgency as there once was, and the level of fatigue that fans had about going through the same thing over and over from a basketball standpoint boils over when you've got a football program that's like, you know what, screw it, that's where my money's going. But I'll bring in Jeff Rabjohns, who joins us now on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. Of course, Jeff, synonymous with Peegs.com, synonymous with Indiana basketball and its coverage for that matter. Jeff, I say that, and you know me, we've known each other for a while now. I say that with 85% flippancy, but is there even a shred of eyebrow raising with that thought comment just about the trajectory of Indiana football and some of the challenges perhaps that creates for basketball?
I think maybe in the emotions of fans it does. I think that's fair, because sometimes fans look at things on a surface level, and they see new coach come into football, new coach go to playoff right away. Why can't new basketball coach do same? And I don't mean that sarcastically. I just mean sometimes people just look at the surface, and that's very understandable. It really is. But it doesn't make situations similar. And the other thing I think, is relevant with Curt Cignetti is he may be one of one. We may be looking at one of the actual unicorns in all of college coaching, because nobody's done anything even approaching what he has done in any college sport. And I checked around with people who work for the NCAA, friends of mine who cover college hockey, other things. Has anybody come close to going from most losses in the history of a sport to national champion of a sport? And the answer is no. But yeah, in the emotions of fans, I think there's something to that. I also think it can be dangerous if it goes too far, though. If people say, okay, Cignetti did it right away, so in any sport, the guy has to do it right away, or, hey, we're just going to throw him in the trash and go get the next guy. You get 1 year. Oh, you didn't do it. Okay, screw you. Oh, bring in Jake. Oh, he didn't do it. Okay, bring in Ravi. He didn't do it. Okay, bring in Eddie. He didn't do it. It's like you can get weird and really screw things up.
Right. I agree with that.
I think there's a difference between fan emotion and university management of a program. Those are two very different things. And
what have you seen, Jeff? I mean, before we get into what went wrong last night, give me, I guess, to offer a lifeline to Indiana fans here, okay? You see this program as up close and personal as anybody covering it. And I've always been vociferous about that fact that you're the guy on the inside, in my opinion, right? So with that said,
and I do live this day to day,
right? Totally. I mean, this is what you do, right? So give me an example, if you will, and if there isn't one, say, hey, Jake, I can't help you there. Darren DeVries, maybe unfortunately, is being judged or lumped in with precedent here. It is his first year. It is a new roster he had to put together late. Is there an example, or is there a situation that you look at, Jeff, and you say, this shows me there has been progress from the time he arrived in Bloomington to now? Is there an area that you look at and you say, that gives me hope and promise?
Well, I would say a couple things. One, and I don't know if you want to jump into Ryan Carr later or how you want to do it. It's your show, so you tell me how you want to do it. But adding somebody who is an NBA vice president, who's run a scouting department for more than a decade, who has 25 years experience in the NBA, scouting, both scouting colleges, high-level high school guys, because they had to start doing some of that with one and done, kids coming to the NBA draft basically about 11 months after they finished high school, and international. Bringing in somebody like that is really significant. When I dropped the news yesterday, there was a lot of reaction from meaningful basketball people, Jonathan Gavoni, Fran Fraschilla, Jeff Goodman, others, about how they were blown away. The other thing that was interesting was my mention started to fill up with Kentucky fans. Why can't we do this? Louisville fans, why can't we do this? Other fan bases wanting that. And I think the Ryan Carr hire is significant. Now, I understand people who say, well, what's he going to do for us right now? Well, right now, nothing. Okay? Let's just be honest. Nothing. It's not going to help you win another game this year. But one of the problems with Indiana basketball, and I think, you understand this because you follow it closely as well, there has been a lack of planning for the future for well over a decade now. This program has been run way too much as a year-to-year operation. And, when I talked to Ryan last night for the video interview, he even mentioned that this program's gotten way too portal dependent. You utilize the portal, yes. Live in it and depend on it every year? No. There needs to be more balance in roster. You need to bring in high school kids who can develop. There needs to be a little more roster stability. And the other thing is, some people are looking at the roster this year and going, well, why does the roster look like this? And this is not to make an excuse, but this is to explain. DeVries gets hired March 19th. The portal's already open. A number of guys who I know who were in the portal, Jake, let's just be honest here. I may get in trouble for saying this, but they knew where they were going before they entered the portal. And I knew they knew where they were going before they entered the portal. So there was a very much of a late start. Then it takes a little while to get your full staff put together. So you're really having to piece things together year one. And, getting Lamar was great. Tucker's very helpful. Some other guys, could develop. Nick Dorn had a great stretch. But the roster needs to be better moving forward. And everybody is aware of the roster deficiencies. There is nobody in Cook Hall who is delusional about what is needed moving forward. Now, you got to go out and get it, of course, but eyes are wide open. Conversations are very honest and real. And you have a staff with 3 guys with a track record of landing players in Drew Adams, Kenny Johnson, and Rod Clark. And then you got a young guy, Nick Norton, who did a really good job getting Chase Branham, a 2027 kid who's now top 30 in the country. So
what do you believe Ryan Carr's role will be within that structure?
He's in charge of roster building. He's going to oversee it. He's going to do a lot of scouting. He's going to do a lot of giving his opinion. He'll work in conjunction with the staff. Darren DeVries has the final call, which, Carr discussed. Same situation when he worked for Larry Bird, Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, Donnie Walsh. So, but his primary role is roster building management. scouting, management. Now the assistants are going to do their scouting as well, and everybody's going to matter. And Ryan Carr did make the point when I was talking with him last night before the game that, like, hey, this is going to be like how we do it at the Pacers. We do it together. Yeah, I have a leadership role, but we do this together. But that's going to be Carr's primary job. And he even said it. Job 1A is roster building. Excuse me. So that's going to be his job. And then he'll be able to give honest opinions too, because he's been in a situation where you always paid players in the NBA. So not only do you have to scout and evaluate, you have to do evaluation, meaning what do you think this guy's worth? What draft slot would we take him at? What do we think he's worth? If you're talking about free agents, what do you think we would be willing to pay this guy? What do we think Jake Query is worth if we bring him in at the 2? So I think there will be a lot of really good input from Ryan Carr when you're talking about the financial side of it as well, which is important because you got to try to figure out who you want, who you can get, and what are you willing to pay certain guys.
Jeff Rabjohns is my guest, Peegs.com, where you can read his work. He's on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. One other thing about Ryan, and I haven't asked Ryan this, maybe this is a better question for Ryan, but is this a Darren DeVries hire? In other words, if Darren DeVries moves on from Indiana for whatever reason, whether that's a year from now, 3 years from now, whatever, was Ryan Carr brought in by the university to report to Darren DeVries, but isolated from Darren DeVries, or was this a DeVries hire where he is part of the DeVries administration as much or more so than the Indiana University basketball administration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I don't know if I can specifically delineate all of that, but what I do know is that Carr and DeVries talked shortly after DeVries was hired. DeVries and his family went up to a Pacer playoff game, and DeVries and Carr talked then. And they'd been texting pretty much since then. So there'd been a lot of basketball communication between those two. And then in the last, I'd say 2 weeks, things started to get pretty serious as far as, hey, I would like you in this role. Let's really get on the phone. They had one really long conversation where they got into specifics. Who would do what? Give me your ideas. What ideas do we think would work? What ideas from the NBA would translate? What ideas from the NBA would not translate? And they had a really, really good long conversation. So I think there's a lot of alignment there. And I know Carr likes DeVries's, ideas of play a more modern style. You need to be able to shoot the three. Yeah, you need more post presence. Everybody realizes that. You need a little more dynamic playmaker at point guard. But there is a lot of alignment between Ryan Carr and Darren DeVries.
Does Indiana's NIL allotment, Jeff Rabjohn's my guest, with the success that Indiana football has had, the money that comes in from that, does the NIL allotment for Indiana University athletics, does football help the basketball program because that means more money is raised or more NIL might be there that they can shift over to basketball? Or does Indiana look at it and say, football is our breadwinner, and that is our primary resources go there, and then basketball follows secondarily?
Well, I think there's a lot of resources going to football right now, and deservedly so. But I don't think football takes away from basketball. I really don't. Because, football is the only entity in any college setting that can automatically increase your revenues fairly easily by tens of millions of dollars. No other sport can do that. Basketball can raise your revenues by millions, but not tens of millions. You just don't have that kind of visibility. The TV contracts aren't the same. The number of butts in seats, season ticket sales, et cetera, aren't the same. So football success is just it is the tide that raises all boats for a college athletic program. But no, I don't think football success hurts IU NIL, if that's the question.
Do you believe Indiana makes the NCAA tournament?
I think it's really tough right now because, there's still like 0.37 wins above the bubble, which is a metric that's on the team sheets this year for the selection committee. But they're going to have to win out which means beating Michigan State at home as well as Minnesota, which they should beat, going on the road, beating Ohio State. And then they're going to need at least one, probably two in the Big Ten tournament, because other teams get to win too. It's not a static metric. So I think it's really tough. I think their chances are diminished, but they are mathematically there. The good is Michigan State's quad one game. Ohio State would be a quad one game. If you get to a second game in the Big Ten tournament, that would be a quad one game. So if all of a sudden you have 5 quad one wins, yeah, you're in the NCAA tournament. Now, there's a whole bunch of ifs baked in there, and a team that just lost at home to Northwestern would have to turn around and beat some teams far better than Northwestern. So it wouldn't be a miraculous run, but it would be pretty close. So I think their chances are slim unless they win out and get 2 in the Big Ten tournament.
Jeff, appreciate the time as always. I know it's a busy time, obviously, with everything going on, but always great breakdown, man. Certainly appreciate it and enjoy the start to hint again at spring. At least it's sunny outside, and we'll see if that means good fortune for Indiana down the stretch. But a lot of work to be done. Appreciate the time as always.
Always good talking to you, bud. See ya.
Jeff Rabjohn's joining me from Peegs.com. We come back. I do want to get more in depth, and Joel Erickson will join us on everything going on with the Colts. He's going to join us top of the hour. Also, want you to hear from Lamar Wilkerson, who I thought had some pretty interesting comments. Elixir worthy, as a matter of fact, if we want to break those down yesterday. But I don't want it to be all doom and gloom on this day, so I'm going to tell you next about 2 reasons why you should say, you know what? From a Central Indiana fan standpoint, let's go. I'm happy. 2 teams that are bringing us a little bit of sunshine. Tell you next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I just checked, Eddie, our Elixir subscription. You know, it's kind of like that Chat GPT. If you use it too often, then it says you cannot use again until, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I bought the Elixir, for those that are unfamiliar with it, and we've had a lot of success with this. It was one of our better purchases. And we have limited budget, right? I mean, our NIL is, when it comes to NIL, we're Ohio Valley over here, right?
Right.
But the Elixir is a computer system that we bought, and it is wonderful. And you can use multiple languages, and that's also a fun aspect of it. But I didn't initially, and this is the other fun part, Eddie, I want to let you know. Initially, when I bought the Elixir, which is a computer where we play a sound clip from a coach or an athlete, and then it puts it through a pretty rigorous filtering system and then tells you what the athlete really wanted to say.
Right.
Okay? Now, I got a notice, and this had gone to my junk email, go figure, about the Elixir, saying that the subscription that I had, we had gone over our data usage last month, and so we cannot refire it back up until 1:30 Eastern today. So
that's very specific.
I know. So sometime around then we'll run some of the Lamar Wilkerson quotes. We could use Ballard too, and now this is the fun part.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of shady Elixir did you buy that it gets caught in your junk?
Well,
or your spam?
Yeah, not to be confused, for example, with my zipper, right? Which the same thing happens.
Yeah.
But and thank you for asking on that. I actually bought, and it was on discount. I got it on a Black Friday special. This is the Commodore 2000 Elixir.
Black Friday or off the black market?
Both. But it's the Commodore 2000 Elixir, which apparently was a hot Christmas item of 1988. So I did get a deal on it. But
so that's why it sounds like a robot.
But that is correct. But here's the thing. And because I was willing to be patient with this data thing with the Elixir, I did get to exercise a new option where we can then get the interpretation in either English or in Chinese.
Really?
Yeah. So we can also get interpretations in the Mandarin language, which will be fun, right?
Yeah.
For our Mandarin speaking friends, that'll be, and I mean, we will skyrocket. We're going international is what I'm getting at. So we can experiment with that. But I wanted to let everybody know, because we talked about Indiana last night and their disastrous performance down the stretch against Northwestern. We can talk about the Pacers and the fact that it was another victory last night, because you're getting minutes for guys that maybe you normally wouldn't get a lot of minutes from, and you are staying right there in the thick of it. Eddie, do you happen to have the NBA right now standings, if you will? And we're inverting these.
What you want?
So, what I want to know is this. If we were to take the teams with the 6 worst records and rank them 1 through 6. So, in other words, if you're going for, and I understand that the difference is whether you're the worst team or the third worst team, your odds are the same in landing that top. I get that. But just for the visualization or the understanding of it, the worst record would be, let's say in this situation, we'll call them seeds for lack of a better thing. The worst record is the 1 seed, then the 2 seed, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Of the 6 worst records, who currently would be the 6th seed? Who is the team that has the 6th best worst record?
That would be the Utah Jazz.
Okay. The 5 seed would belong to who?
The New Orleans Pelicans.
The 4 seed would belong to who?
The Washington Wizards.
The 3 seed would belong to who?
The Brooklyn Nets.
The 2 seed would belong to?
The Indiana Pacers.
And the 1 seed would belong to?
Sacramento Kings.
Who won the other night, right? So that, honestly, I mean, we're at the point now, they're not going to make the playoffs. So it's like, you know what? It is impossible. You saw what Boozer did last night for Duke. You see what DeBanza does. The stuff with Peterson in Kansas. Maybe the good news here is if something goes haywire and the Pacers, in typical NBA fashion, get kind of screwed and drop back and find themselves with the 4th pick, maybe Peterson falls that low. And he is a wonderful talent, but there's question about just the overall. There's a lot going on there with NIL money and the minutes he's playing in Kansas, and is he hurt? And there just seems to be a lot of drama, but he's a great player, okay? Now, so that was kind of a victory last night to stay there in that 2 spot. But I also wanted to point out, the Miami Redhawks, I know that obviously their coach has been on the morning show. Their entire coaching staff, essentially, the Miami basketball team, their entire coaching staff, but one. I think they have one assistant coach that is not affiliated with the state of Indiana. The rest, literally the rest of that coaching staff are Indiana guys and have played like in high school here or college here. They have all kinds of connections to here. And you look at what they're doing. And I know I'm going to make two comments that are almost borderline embarrassing. Last night they beat I think it was last night, but they recently beat Eastern Michigan. They're 28 and unblemished, okay? And you can tell me all day long, Jake, give me a break. Look at their pre-conference schedule. Old Dominion, Trinity, Air Force, Mercyhurst, Arkansas Pine Bluff, UNC Greensboro, IU East, Maine. I get it. But they're 28-0. And I'm going to give a really bad comparison, but it has a little bit of bad comparison.
Do I need to dust off the sounder?
Yep. Now, this isn't really an analogy, rather than just a comparison. When I was in high school, I was part of a team that was 22-0. Now, there is zero comparison to a non-varsity level basketball team in a high school and a Division I MAC program. I totally get it. And there's not a lot of comparison that can be made between the mind and the maturity of a 14-year-old and that of a 19 or 20-year-old. Or in this case with Miami, 22, 23-year-old. I get it. But, and if you've played sports, no matter what level you play, but if you play sports, and yes, the longer you go or the more experience you get, the more games you would need with it. But the reality is this: no matter what level you play, eventually you start playing against yourself. You start playing against, it's just like golf. Golf is the ultimate game because the only competitor is you. And when you are 28-0, eventually you start playing not against Eastern Michigan and not against Western Michigan and not against Ball State, but you are playing against the internal pressure of yourself of knowing that record is hanging over you all the time. That record is more noted to that roster in Miami than it is whoever they're playing next. And you start playing against that as much as the opponent. And that's why it is impressive, regardless of who they're playing, that they've gone this far, and they are the only team in Division I college basketball unbeaten. Also, Indy Ignite wanted to simply point out, off to a 10-2 start. They are leading the pro volleyball, the Major League Volleyball League right now at 10-2. Their next home game, great environment. I love going up there to the Fishers Event Center. They take on Orlando. They just beat Orlando. Sorry about that. Their next upcoming game, no, I take that back. They're against Orlando. No, that's not right. Hang on. Bear with me here, Eddie. I got to get the schedule. My computer just completely froze up in front of me here. Next home game for the Indy Ignite, who are off to their 10-2 start, is Sunday. Sunday against Omaha, 2 o'clock. That is at the Fishers Event Center.
The Supernovas.
That is correct. Supernova. Joel A. Erickson, Supernova in his own right, will join us next. We will go over what's going on NFL Combine, that conversation, other side.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
This from Gary, by the way. Gary's not a fan of mine. But Gary, for like 6 months, points out that he's not a fan of mine. And Gary, I appreciate that you continue to listen, and I mean that sincerely. Hey, Jake, you talk about how authentic you are, and now you're doing something that Mark Patrick used to do. Does Mark Patrick care that you steal his material with this elixir business? Give me a break. I know Mark. I like Mark a lot. I don't recall. Mark was still is a very talented guy. Did great radio. Did a lot of fun things. That's not one of them that I recall. I don't remember how did we come about with the elixir? Do you remember, Eddie?
It was one of those spontaneous things, Jake.
And, is it possible that it was spontaneous because it was in my subconscious from something I heard on the Bob and Tom program in 1988? I guess.
All right, now you're just on your therapist couch.
That's right. But I don't recall stealing that from Mark Patrick, but I can certainly text him and ask him if he's okay with it.
Someone did ask a good question. Isn't an elixir a drink?
Maybe. I think we made the name up too, didn't we? I think I just said the Elixir 2000 or something. I don't remember. I don't recall. Did you get a hold of Joel by the way?
Yeah.
Joel A. Erickson, speaking of drinks, probably pining for the beer fairy. Been a long time since. Does Joel still remember us, by the way? It's been a long time since we've had him on. Joel, my name's Jake Query. I do the program from 12 until 3. It's a pleasure to meet you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I do believe an elixir is a drink. It's like Bugs Bunny's secret stuff from Space Jam. That's an elixir.
Oh, is it really? See?
Well, I think in that movie it turned out to be water, but they pitched it as an elixir.
Maybe that also was in my subconscious. I don't know. Gary probably knows the answer to these things. He keeps a tally, apparently, of areas of where we've been stealing material. Joel,
you can't get mad at me. I cited Space Jam.
That is correct. You did. Well, you're a journalist, right? So, Joel, are you at the Combine right now?
I am, yes. I am standing in the convention center hallway.
Who's the most famous person you've seen today? I saw one person yesterday. I'm not going to say any names. I saw one person who is a famed NFL writer, and I was stunned. They looked like the Great Gazoo. I couldn't believe how small they were with a huge head. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Weirdly, that kind of describes multiple.
Half the room? Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Most famous person I saw today, John Harbaugh walked past. So,
that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, John Harbaugh.
I don't know if you know this or not, but he's brother-in-laws with Tom Crean. Actually, his brother is, so he's brother-in-law, right? Something like that.
Yeah, they're like they all show up at all the games and stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
they should make more mention of that. Okay. Before we get to yesterday and some of the comments that were made, let's begin with today. Is there anything new that has come out of the Combine today or that you anticipate coming out today?
Not that I'm aware of yet, but hopefully I'm going to start making more of my rounds here in a little bit, and hopefully I can dig some stuff up. I don't know if there's anything hugely new other than I did just see there's another linebacker available, although he would cost a lot because it sounds like Tremaine Edmonds has been given permission to seek a trade from Chicago, but he would cost quite a bit of money.
The Colts themselves, Joel, let's begin with this. Chris Ballard addressed the media yesterday. Shane Steichen was on with JMV. Chris Ballard was on again this morning on the morning show. I don't know if you heard that, but was there anything that Chris Ballard said that you took away that you found to be a newsworthy nugget that you did not anticipate going into it?
I think most of what he said was kind of expected. I do think it was interesting that he was so confident in re-signing Alec Pierce, not necessarily from a local standpoint. I think if you've been paying attention to, what people like me have been writing and saying, you know that Alec Pierce is the type of person who maybe would be more likely to re-sign than people would think. But I know at the end of the season, I got a lot of pushback from people when I just quoted him. I had made up a quote, which it was weird because it was on video, that if they got Daniel Jones back, that it would go a long way to re-signing Alec Pierce. So nationally, I think everyone thought, well, Pierce definitely wants out of there. I haven't thought that or been told that or anything. I've been told the opposite of that he was probably more likely to want to come back. And then Ballard saying that they're confident that they'll be able to get him back, sort of, to me, I think, is it maybe wasn't surprising, but I think it was surprising to other people, around here and maybe online, thinking, well, he's just going to go to the open market and get as much. I mean, yes, Alec Pierce is very, very valuable, but also, he's also a guy who I think is likes where he is and really does, like, him and Daniel Jones really are very close.
The Alec Pierce, okay, let's go to this, Joel, and I've made this mention before. If you're the Colts, okay, do you believe the Colts will use a franchise tag?
I think that there's a pretty strong possibility that it's going to be too hard to get both of them done before Monday. I think,
and so if that's the case, you would tag Pierce, right? Because the money that if you tag Jones, the $47 million that you would be required to pay him is far greater than market value. Whereas if you tag Pierce, the 28 that you'd have to pay him, or roughly 28, is basically his market value anyway, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that at least the way they pitched it yesterday is that they don't really think they're going to have to use it with either of them. So maybe I would think that, especially with the stuff Jones has said, Jones has been bullish on coming back, really ever since the end of the season. So I would think that you'd be able to go, well, maybe if we're not done with Jones, we're close with Jones, so we tag Pierce just to make sure, But they definitely want to keep Ballard had an odd aside where he kind of said, the only reason we ever used the tag on Michael Pittman was that he was in Africa hunting, and we were worried about him signing the dotted line on what we had agreed to, which that's interesting. That he was on a plane and that's why they tagged it, but they would prefer to not do those things.
Joel A. Erickson is my guest. He's on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. By the way, cold brew meaning the manner in which it comes about. You can also get a hot coffee at Java House. Joel, the deal with Daniel Jones, okay? Number one, do you believe he's your week one starter if he's resigned?
I have my reservations. The Colts believe he's the week one starter if re-signed. And generally the Colts are the people who end up mattering in these things. But I have my reservations just based on the Achilles tear and his recovery. But the way they're talking, they think he's the week one starter.
If he is not ready to go, do you believe that there is the chance they would bring in a veteran? Or do you think, in fact, that because Chris Ballard, and I get it, he's not going to say, open for business, come and take Anthony Richardson. But he was non-committal on that. Do you think Richardson is still a part of the Colts at training camp?
I think no. I know what Chris Ballard said, but it just, to me, even some of the stuff that went on last year, it just feels like there's a little bit of a disconnect there. I would assume that Richardson wants a clear chance to start, and he's not necessarily going to get that. He's not going to get that here. They believe in Jones as the immediate future for this quarterbacking situation. So I've in my head, it's been that he's going to end up somewhere else.
Do you believe that Nick Cross will be a Colt when they show up at training camp?
That is a really interesting one because I think it all depends on the price point. The safety market is this really hard market to predict because it feels like every year now there's two or three guys, and it's hard to predict which ones are going to get it. But there's two or three guys that get big money in the safety market every year, and then it just falls off a table. And the next group of guys end up waiting and waiting and waiting. And I don't know at this point exactly where the NFL sort of slots Nick Cross in. Do they see him as something more than a in-the-box safety? Because if they see him as something more than an in-the-box safety, I think there's a chance that he gets into that big money. If they think that that's what he is, I would guess that maybe he's more affordable and he's more in that second group of players who have to, kind of take what they can get. And I think in that situation, there's a chance that the contract he signs is advantageous for the Colts in that he's back. If he's in the big high money where you're getting, something like what Cam Bynum got last year, I don't think he's back.
Do you believe that Zaire Franklin will be an integral part of the Colts when training camp begins?
That one was maybe the hardest one for me to read yesterday. I still think, Chris Ballard said we have to get faster in the front seven. Well, that's three positions. That's defensive end, that's defensive tackle, and linebacker. And we all kind of know, that you're not really talking about getting faster at defensive tackle. You might want to get more explosive at defensive tackle. I think defensive tackle, really, you're looking at, we need somebody for when DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart are too old to be here anymore, more than anything, which leaves you with defensive end and linebacker. And if you're going to get younger and faster is linebacker. Like it's defensive end too, but in terms of the word faster, those defensive line positions, to me, usually you talk about explosion and quickness and stuff like that. You don't necessarily talk about speed. I think that's more of a linebacker thing. Now, you could in theory bring back Franklin and get a young, fast, weak side linebacker and get faster at linebacker. I asked Chris Ballard this. They talked a lot about having those young guys on the field last year. And defensive backs on the field instead of linebackers. It didn't really work out that way. Those linebackers were kind of on the field a lot, even without. And so I think there's a chance he's gone, but I just don't know, just given that you can also, maybe just draft a weak side linebacker.
Joel, Joel A. Erickson is our guest. When you look at, if there's a year to not have a first-round pick, you always want a first-round pick. I get it, right? But I kind of get the feeling, and you tell me in this chicken and egg question which it is this a draft that doesn't have a lot of first-round oomph, and therefore I guess it doesn't totally hurt you if you're not in the first round? Or is this a draft that because the team that I cover is not in the first round, I feel like it doesn't have a lot of oomph only because I'm not paying attention to the first round?
It kind of feels like maybe this is a draft that's more deep than, exciting at the top. And that's just from listening to draft analysts talk and some of these guys that get a little bit more into the prospects. Like, just for example, Ruben Bain from Miami, who, we all watched him in the national championship game. He's a great player, but he's got very short arms. And they're talking about him dropping to like the back end of the top 10. They're not talking about him dropping further than that, which sort of tells me, maybe they don't have that high end talent. The other thing is, I think, is there's really one first round quarterback from my understanding, and it's Mendoza, and he'll be gone with the first pick. So, but the other thing is, it sounds like it's deep at defensive end. It sounds like it's deep at linebacker, which obviously those are the two positions the Colts need most. And it's kind of the opposite of last year, where both of those things were very, very – linebacker was incredibly thin last year, to the point that I think that the linebackers the Colts wanted all ended up going much higher than a spot the Colts would have picked them. So it seems like it's more of a deep class than a high-end first-round type class.
Now, Joel, I got to ask you, Joel A. Erickson is our guest. Most of the conversations you and I have are on the radio. We don't have a lot of discussions outside of the radio, not to say we don't get along. Gary or Greg, I can't remember his name, some guy whose name starts with a G, on the text line is telling me that I'm not authentic. Now, and he says I'm not authentic because, I get to go to games for free and things like that. It is my personal belief that when you make a long list of the things and the attributes that really make me great, that humility is probably the top of the list, and therefore there's an authenticity that comes with that. Would you agree with that, just based on the limited exposure that you've had?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
I mean, if authenticity was your problem, I don't think we'd be able to talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Well, or the fact, and I can't remember if it was you or one of your colleagues, but somebody one time was covering a game somewhere and sent a thing like, "Help, I'm stranded in this town for an extra day. Did anyone get murdered here?" And I gave him an alphabetized list with GPS on locations of 7 different spots to hit. Now, that's authentic, is it not?
See, that's the thing. I just don't think you can make a claim of being fake. If we know that you, like, one of the clips that you guys still have of me laughing hysterically at you bringing up Milwaukee serial killers and locations.
That's right. Do we have that clip by chance, Eddie?
I don't know if it made the move. I gotta search.
Excuse me?
I don't know if it made
Joel,
the move.
can we get you to laugh maniacally real quick as if you might actually be a serial killer?
It's hard to do that. It's hard to do that laugh in a convention center hallway because it's so loud.
It was. I mean, what it was I was pointing out that in Milwaukee, where the Fiserv Forum is, the home of the Bucks, that is the location of Jeffrey Dahmer's chocolate factory where he worked. And once they tore down the chocolate factory, they ultimately built the arena, and the first concert was a doubleheader of the Violent Femmes and the Killers.
That's right.
Which is true.
That's right.
And when I dropped that nugget on you, and I think, to be honest with you, I don't think you were laughing out of humor, but rather out of incredulous disbelief, redundant, over the fact that I just said it on the radio, and you thought to yourself, this guy's authentic, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's definitely it.
By the way, here we go. Eddie, I believe, has it here. Here we go. That is a true story. Look it up. That's a true story. That's a true story. Look that up. You people in Wisconsin are demented. Yeah. I mean, right there. And Ed Gein's from Wisconsin, too. I mean, and he's made his rounds on the Netflix stuff. So you guys are doing your part up there, right?
See, that's the kind of laugh you can't let out in a convention center hallway. No one is that's wandering around for whatever conventions here, because I think there's other ones that are not the NFL. Really wants to hear that laugh at full volume.
Now, see, I don't know if I should take this as a compliment. Kirk has texted in this. In the limited interaction I've had with Jake off the field, I can attest to the fact that he's just as weird off the field. I don't know if is that a compliment, Joel? I'm not sure where we're going with this, right?
I think it is. I think it is.
I don't.
But I'm from Wisconsin, so
I mean, do people walk? And maybe this is the case. I don't. It's kind of like people that have BO don't know they have BO. Like, do I walk away and people are thinking to themselves, "No, that's one weird dude." Which is fine. But you can just tell me, right?
Well, I mean, the hard part is, like, I don't think that. But again, I'm from Wisconsin, which we've already established as a place for people who are maybe a little bit, odd.
But here's the thing. I don't know what it means about me or what I should say about whether I should find comfort in the fact that somebody is claiming that I might be normal when their laugh sounds like this. Right?
It's fair. It's totally fair. Totally fair.
Joel, how would you describe, on a serious note, and I know that we are very fortunate to do it, and I know that there are a lot of people that would love to be able to go to the combine and see kind of behind the curtain, if you will, even though it's been obviously more exposed than it has been in the past through the NFL Network and other such avenues. But overall, when you get home from work and your wife says, "So how was work today?" And you say, "Well, I was at the first day of the combine." And she says, "Explain to me what all that means." How would you describe the experience of covering the NFL combine?
It's the thing about, and I agree with you. Like, I am very, very lucky to do this job. Like, my dad has worked on dairy farms and construction his whole life, and I would much rather do this than either of those two things. And that's all very, very true. But the thing that I think when people ask me about my job that they're most surprised to find out is that most of my job is standing somewhere waiting for somebody more important to have time to talk to me. And I think the combine is sort of like the distillation of that. It's an entire week for me of standing somewhere waiting for somebody more important to maybe have the time to talk to me. And, listeners can decide if that's fun or not. It's not my favorite thing, but that's kind of the combine. It's a lot of being around and standing around and trying to get to the right person to speak to, which is, it's a lot of waiting. That's the drawback to my job is there's a lot of waiting, and the combine is sort of like ground zero for the waiting.
The one thing that I have to remind myself, Joel, and I thought about this yesterday when I was at the combine. We look at, and I make fun of, or I point out Gary Gregg, who texts in and literally probably twice a week has something to say about what a moron I am or something I said that's wrong or whatever else, right? And there are probably times where he's pointing something out where I was wrong or I had the wrong opinion, or he'll write something and I say, anybody. And you say to yourself, that's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. One of the things I think that comes with, and I'm sure you get emails as well from people telling you that you wrote a column that was incorrect, or you had a fact wrong, or you asked a bad question. And it's easy from a human nature standpoint to get insecure of that or to get defensive of that, except for that to a large extent, our jobs are to do exactly that about other people. When you go to the combine and Chris Ballard comes out on a podium, I'm asking him 10 different questions if I was there for that. I'm asking him 10 different questions, all of which are indirectly questioning the manner in which he goes about his business. So shouldn't it be fair game and fair play that we should handle and that critique of ourselves?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot too. Just in terms of that is what we do. People, a lot of times, you go in and, an athlete's upset or something at a question and you think, well, if someone was at the end of my pickup basketball game and said, how did you miss that 3-pointer when there was no one around you? I guess that one wouldn't bother me that much because I would just be like, well, I'm not very good. That's why. But the similar situation for someone who is good, that they might not like that question very much. And it's one of those things you kind of have to try to remind yourself every once in a while, because it is easy to get kind of ruffled and feel some of that stuff versus knowing that that is what we do. We, like you said, we spend most of our time saying, well, you guys said this, but this happened. And you guys said you're going to do this, but why are you still? All that stuff is not necessarily the most fun for those guys to answer. And, we probably do react the same way most of the time.
Joel, when looking at this offseason, listening to Chris Ballard, and I think a year ago there was a lot of uncertainty. And then, and things, they obviously played well, and Daniel Jones played well. And I mentioned earlier, the Achilles for Daniel Jones was not necessarily the tendon that ended his season, but rather his inability to handle straight line rush. And Pittsburgh exposed that a little bit. And we can talk about the injury all we want, but we were starting to see a little bit of water being taken in Daniel Jones' inconsistencies that can come with a lot of pressure, right? But they were still playing at a high level, even with all of that. And they pushed all in for Sauce Gardner. Do you feel like now it is a franchise that still feels that it is a move or a breakaway from being right there? Or have they been tempered a little bit in terms of this season and their expectation and just where they think things are going?
I know this surprises a lot of people, but I do think that the Colts believe that, with better circumstances in terms of health and Daniel Jones specifically, that they are a really good team. I think not just Chris Ballard, but definitely Shane Steichen, I think feels like if he has the pieces to that offense, that he can get them back to where they were before that, because I think even in the Pittsburgh game, the Atlanta game, some of those games where Jones made more mistakes than usual, they still were putting up, big time yardage numbers, big time points numbers. And I do think he feels like if they've got those guys, that they can be really, really good. And that's we'll find out. We'll find out if Daniel Jones' Achilles tendon allows him to play the way he did at the beginning of last year. But I do think from a Colts perspective, and specifically the people in charge of the Colts, I do think that they believe that they can be that kind of offense again. And if they get some help on defense, that they can be what we thought they were going to be when they were 8-2 and in the playoffs and competing for the division and everything like that.
By the way, here's one fella that chimes in our conversation. Jake, I'm a huge fan of yours. Stay the way you are. I love your enthusiasm. Now, Joel, here's the thing. That you're excited by that, right? When you read that, and that's a nice compliment. Right. Okay. Fella's last name is Query. Yeah. Now, I don't believe that I'm related, but how many queries can there be walking around, right?
I have you met many queries?
I have, but it was oddly enough, I met a ton of them once. It was the weirdest thing ever. A family reunion. Outside of that, no, there's a bunch of queries walking around in Spencer and the Cloverdale area that apparently, and I don't know if this is unique to our family or common to most, but apparently back in like the 1880s or the early 1900s, there were a couple of Query brothers that got drunk on moonshine and got in a fight, and one of them got PO'd and moved to Hamilton County and left everybody in Owen County, and so that branched the family, and now there's two different families. So we don't claim those other folk, is what I'm getting at, even though that was 150 years ago.
Yeah, there are a ton of Ericksons, especially in Wisconsin, and so I don't have the same experience because there's just an enormous amount of Ericksons.
Are you related to Leaf?
You know what? I have no idea, but I like to claim it.
Aren't there two different spellings, S-E-N or S-O-N?
Well, there's also like a Norwegian version that's S-S-O-N. The ENs. Yeah,
Marcus Ericsson, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the ENs tend to be more Swedish in other countries than Norway, at least in my general understanding. There was actually at my high school, in my class, there was an Elise Erickson who we lockered next to each other, but hers was EN and I was ON.
Just out of curiosity, was Elise an attractive gal?
She was very attractive. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's good news that it was an EN-ON situation, right? I mean, for what it's worth. And you're of the Swedish side, or you're of the other side?
I'm Norwegian. My dad is Norwegian.
So you're on a cruise. You're on a cruise line as opposed to a chef, is what we're getting at,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That part of my people is apparently incredible at cross country skiing. That's
right.
what I've learned over the last 2 weeks.
And then they all collapse as soon as they cross the finish line and then get their gold and go home. Yeah.
Except for the one dude that wins all the gold medals, because that guy I think might be a machine.
Joel, which country is he from? The guy that wins all the golds. He doesn't collapse. You're saying he's Nordic?
No, he's from Norway. His name I think I'm going to get this right. Is Johannes Hasfot Klabo.
Can you do that one more time, please?
Johannes Hasfot Klabo.
See that? Now here's the thing. That's what it sounds like if you need to clear your throat. Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
Johannes Hasfot Klabo.
And then once you clear your throat, you sound more like this. Eddie? Eddie? There you go. Joel A. Erickson joining us. Java House, Cold Brew Coffee Guest Line. Joel, appreciate the time as always. Lastly, what's upcoming in terms of your coverage from the Combine? What's next on the Colts schedule, if you will?
Colts schedule is pretty much kind of just trying to chase down some of the stuff that Chris Ballard kind of hinted at. We'll be writing a little bit more of what he said. I do have something I've got to write up on Caden Curry from Center Grove from today. And then the rest of the week for me is kind of, like I said, kind of just, waiting for someone way more important than me to talk to me.
All right. Appreciate the time as always, Joel, and we will talk to you soon, all right?
Okay, we'll see you.
Joel A. Erickson joining us on the program. We come back. We will get back into some of the things that Chris Ballard said. And due to popular demand, unless you're Gary Gregg, we're going to do the elixir and find out what was going on in Indiana last night as well.
Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Last night at the Assembly Hall, Indiana losing to Northwestern. And I don't know. You know, I have such conflicting thoughts on this and emotion because I do think that Darren DeVries is a good coach. And I don't know that how accurately and I only say that because, you know, he obviously had done a really good job at Drake. At West Virginia, and I know they missed the tournament last year, but just barely. And there are people in West Virginia that would tell you, like, hey, we thought for sure this was the guy. Like, we thought this was the long-term guy. It's hard to judge him right now. Darren DeVries and Indiana basketball to a great extent. And we're starting to find out why. Was Darren DeVries Indiana's first choice? No. I don't know that he was in their first 5 choices. And we can sit here and preach and spout till the cows come home that they held on to Mike Woodson too long. I don't think anybody disputes that. The really interesting and fascinating thing to me about Indiana, the Archie Miller era feels like your sophomore year of high school. Everyone remembers your freshman year because you're wide-eyed and you're coming into this new school and you're just it's almost overwhelming. Everybody remembers their junior year because at least where I went to school, that was the big year for prom. But also in the latter part of your junior year, you finally kind of get brought in by the seniors, and there's like kind of a passing of the torch. And you know everybody's got their driver's license by then, and you really start to feel like you're emerging as a leader in the school. And then your senior year, it goes without saying, everyone remembers. But sophomore year is one of those you look back on, you're like, what happened then? I don't remember much about that. Did we go through that? You're just kind of in this holding pattern. And the Archie Miller era kind of feels that way. I think they had Romeo Langford, okay? Outside of that, it was just like, what went wrong there? And I think Archie Miller just is one that, from a basketball standpoint, might have been ready for that job, but from the pressure cooker was not.
Is that the Nate Bjorkgren era, if you're comparing it to the Pacers?
That's exactly correct. That is exactly correct. Or even the Jim O'Brien era, for that matter, right? But the different coaches that have come through, and it is very difficult to follow a legendary act, even a quarter century later. And Mike Davis, I have always felt, and I had issue with Mike Davis, don't get me wrong. I mean, Mike Davis, I've told the story before. I mean, when I say issue with Mike Davis, I mean like Mike Davis had to be restrained by assistant coaches for me once at a practice. And Indiana called and didn't want me coming down to cover a game, the whole deal. But I always, in the end, and I probably erred. That was just probably as much on me, just in terms of an altercation I had with Mike Davis. I saw Mike Davis a couple of years ago in the Atlanta airport, and he could not have been kinder. And I have always felt that Indiana owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to Mike Davis because he handled that very, very well in terms of being put in the most difficult situation in the history of college basketball. But with that said, he did not handle it the last couple of years, and they probably should have made that change sooner than they did. Kelvin Sampson was a disaster. I from the get-go, that's the guy that I pinned it on as much as anybody of getting that program to the very bottom and never letting it come back. But my long-winded point here is that Darren DeVries, I think, it is very easy for us based on precedent, because the precedent with Indiana basketball says that they have gone with things past the expiration date. And so even though Darren DeVries 1 year is not the expiration date, there is a very short leash because of a PTSD of the way things have gone routinely in the past. He had to put together a roster at the last minute because everyone had transferred. That's the era we live in now. He's trying to find some stability. I think Lamar Wilkerson is a really good player. He's a dynamic scorer. And last night, they go into a situation where who in the world ever would have thought that Indiana would lose 6 straight times to Northwestern, for crying out loud. Northwestern. But they did. And in the end, was Tucker DeVries fouled on the three-point shot? Yeah, probably. But that's kind of a bang-bang play. I'll give Indiana credit for not falling victim to, just going in all told and blaming that on the officiating, because they put themselves in that position to begin with. They just did. Lamar Wilkerson, very clearly, this will be the second of those 2 cuts that we have, Eddie. This is Lamar Wilkerson being very clearly frustrated after the loss.
That's just the game we shouldn't have lost. It's one of them self-inflicted losses, as you say. We was the reason why we lost. Kudos to Northwestern. They played a good game, but there's no way in hell we should have lost that game, man. And we just being frankly honest.
Okay, I commend him there. That's actually a little bit of leadership, because he's not throwing anybody under the bus. He's saying that's on us, credit to the opponent, but we lost that game. We should not have let it come down to that. We lost that game. But later, when he was asked just what went wrong in general, you could sense the frustration in Lamar Wilkerson.
Man, we just wasn't hooked up as a team. As a bunch of group of seniors, man, we got to be better. Me personally, I have to be better at leading this team, stepping up. We could have made some plays down the stretch that could have helped us, but it's just one of the ones that hurt, man. Because this was what our resume was. This hurt our resume. So now we have to try to go get these next ones and then put our focus towards that. But ultimately, man, it shouldn't have came down to the ref. We shouldn't have put the ref in a position to make that call. We should have, when we was up, we shouldn't have got comfortable. And we just gotta do better, man. We just gotta do better.
Okay, now, a lot going on there, including mentioning maybe some discord. Do you want to run this through the Elixir, Eddie, and find out what he had to say?
Are we sure that the Elixir's ready?
Hold on. Nintendo style, right? Did you blow into the cartridge?
That was you.
Okay, let me come around and check.
I think there's some more dust particles floating up in the air. I think we need to clean it off a little bit more.
Let me go get a dust rag and come back, and then we'll run.
Need to make sure that your subscription is letting you have access to the Elixir.
It said 1:30 p.m. It was supposed to be active, but we'll check it in the break and come back.
Katie Gerald's possibly one of the greatest players ever to play this game in the state of Indiana. Steph, that's saying quite a bit, isn't it?
That is saying quite a bit. There have been a lot of great players to play in Indiana, but Katie Gerald's just one of the many to follow in the footsteps of the ones that started before. A great player.
The Beech Grove Hornets hit the floor at center court. They are excited, and the celebration begins for the 28-1 state champs in 3A. What a game.
What a game indeed. Beech Grove came out really from the beginning and did not look back. You cannot stop Katie Gerald, and everybody else really stepped up, hit some big shots, got some big rebounds.
Katie Gerald's of Beech Grove, one of the most dominant high school athletes I have ever seen. That was the 2003 3A state championship. Stephanie White, by the way, on the call there. Beech Grove over South Bend St. Joe, 63-45. And Katie Gerald's a prolific career. The 2003 IHSAA Final Four scoring leader with 79 combined points. Also, the Mental Attitude Award winner, Indiana Miss Basketball, McDonald's All-American, and then a great career at Purdue that has led her now, of course, back with Stephanie White in the coaching ranks. Stephanie White in the WNBA. Katie Gerald's, of course, from the college standpoint after a prolific playing career in the WNBA as well. IHSAA Girls Basketball State Finals presented by the Indiana Fever and Indiana Pacers are this Saturday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. You can celebrate education-based athletics and show your support for local athletes. And when you are paying to go watch high school athletics, you're doing more than just supporting your community. You're supporting young people and the entire principles and foundation of that of mental attitude and sportsmanship of the IHSAA. Participating in a state final is a life-defining moment, and you can be right there. Don't miss it. Nothing compares to attending the IHSAA basketball state finals in person. IHSAA.org for ticket information.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It's a great song. Great song from REM. So Lamar Wilkerson last night, you could tell, was frustrated. And I think he's a fabulous player. And he is good. He is as offensively gifted as anybody that Indiana has. But, late in that game, you heard him mention there, Tucker DeVries, and what should have been probably a foul. But you can't you've got Northwestern there. You can't put yourself in that position.
How do you go over 9 minutes without a field goal? They missed 11 shots.
That's the thing. And that's exactly what he's saying here, right? That drought in the second half. Now, we have the elixir. Now, Gary Gregg doesn't like this because apparently Mark Patrick used to do this. That's news to me. My apologies here if there's a copyright infringement. As somebody who's now a trademark owner, I'm well aware of that.
You are
right?
very sensitive to that.
I'm very sensitive.
Among other things.
But the elixir, which apparently Aunt B also got drunk off of, and Andy Griffith, maybe that's where subconsciously the name popped up for me. I don't know. But either way, the elixir, we ran it through. We did a test pattern in the commercial break. It appears to be working. Here's how we do this. We take something that an athlete says. We run it through the elixir. It is the truth serum that tells us what the athlete really is feeling. Let's listen to Lamar Wilkerson last night again, talking about that long second-half drought and the frustration of that loss to Northwestern.
Man, we just wasn't hooked up as a team. As a bunch of group of seniors, man, we got to be better. Me personally, I have to be better at leading this team, stepping up. We could have made some plays down the stretch that could have helped us, but it's just one of the ones that hurt, man. Because this was what our resume was. This hurt our resume. So now we have to try to go get these next ones and then put our focus towards that. But ultimately, man, it shouldn't have came down to the ref. We shouldn't have put the ref in a position to make that call. We should have, when we was up, we shouldn't have got comfortable, and we just gotta do better, man. We just gotta do better.
Now the elixir was a little thrown off apparently by the sniffling in the background. But with that said, it just had a chance to run it. Go ahead and hit the button and run that through the elixir, and then we'll see what it has to say. Okay, here we go.
What are we doing here? What am I doing here? For real, you think I came here to lose to Northwestern? We need to get this figured out, cause the bubble may have burst. Little help here.
Oh. Now the elixir, by the way, we clearly didn't pay for the caffeinated version. Can we get some Java House coffee for the elixir? Maybe some of the Wrangler Energy?
Yeah, I wonder also if what kind of voice it would happen after too much Surfside.
Nothing. Surfside makes you just sound smooth, Eddie.
I guess
as you
that's
know.
right.
Surfside perfectly smooth. Maybe that's what the elixir needs, though.
What's it make you sound like, Jake, if you are smooth already?
Well, ultra smooth. That's the way it is. And that's the thing about the no carbonation, right? It's ultra smooth in its own
You know what somebody pointed out on the text line, Jake? You know what Lamar Wilkerson just did? He's talking code.
You know what? He is speaking in QR. Last night, Eric went with me to the Pacer game. Eric wrote a book about the Pacers, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. Went to the Pacer game with me last night. Eric's son, at one point, Eric actually did a video because he said his son, all about the QR. All about the QR. And in addition to that, Eddie, thank you for mentioning the QR. And for those that are unfamiliar, it used to be that kids would say 6'7", right? That was the thing, 6'7". That's totally
it's still the thing. But I think Kevin Bowen's putting it to bed because he's trying to make it.
QR thing is totally 2025, right? Completely 2025.
Well, yeah, QR thing, yeah, totally 2025, Jake. Yeah, That was so last year.
No,
yeah.
No, the 6'7" thing is QR is.
Can you make
up
your mind? It's 2026.
That's what I said.
You said 2025.
I said the 6'7" is totally 2025.
You said the QR. I'll run it back.
That's a Freudian slip then. The 6'7" is 2025. It's the QR that's 2026. Okay, just for example. Here is a listener text. Jake, I'm in Cancun, spreading QR like crazy here. Listening now. See, QR. If you speak in code to your friends and they say, are you speaking in code there? And you say, no, not code. Because when you go to a restaurant and they say, our menus are online now, what do you need to scan? The QR code. So if you're speaking in code to your friends, you just say QR, and they know that means you're speaking in code, and kids love this, Eddie. Kids love it. And listen, Gary Gregg can get back to me if you'd like on this. That we didn't steal that from Mark Patrick. That's 100% authentically real, the QR. The QR is the code that is sweeping the nation, and kids love it. They absolutely love it. Rick Carlisle had some interesting comments about the NBA. He said those yesterday on the morning show. As a matter of fact, we could probably replay those for you because the NBA has responded to that. And that also is interesting. I know that this was talked about a little bit yesterday afternoon, but it was after we were on. And then you had the game last night with Philadelphia. And there are still, I'm going to go back to, I do find it interesting. If the Pacers are tanking, if the Pacers are blatantly disregarding the game by intentionally throwing games or whatever it may be, then why are there like 17,000 people there every night? Even if you bought the tickets ahead of time on a discount, whatever, because everyone knows the situation. To me, tanking is about, if you're looking at it and you say, we're just going to rest everyone, because we don't want to be a 9 seed. We're going to rest everybody, and that's that. The situation, Mother Nature got the ball rolling on it, and then eventually the Pacers were like, okay, now we know where things are. And that makes sense to me. And you heard Rick Carlisle yesterday on the morning show say that the Pacers, when they were fined $100,000 for not playing Aaron Nesmith, notably against Utah, after Aaron Nesmith had gotten hurt against New York, that fine was levied after Rick Carlisle says that the NBA asked him to play Nate Nesmith and even consider like giving him some sort of a shot or medicating him to make him eligible or healthy enough to play. And we'll replay for you what Rick Carlisle had to say and then read you what the NBA said back next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Two o'clock hour underway in Indianapolis. For that matter, the 2 o'clock hour is underway everywhere in the Eastern time zone. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program.
Good afternoon, Jake. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
How's your Wednesday so far?
I can't complain. It doesn't do any good anyway, right? But I can't complain. But from a sports standpoint, there is, if you were going to be a complainer, there's plenty to complain about.
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
We will get to the did I?
No, that's why I said that.
Okay. We'll get to.
You can see who cares about who here.
Oh, I'm a very caring guy.
Obviously not.
People tell me that a lot.
No.
I get that a lot.
Just like how your humility is your number one trait.
If you were to list, like on the left column, all the things about me that are great: handsome, youthful, witty, cut, athletic,
trampoline hamstrings.
That's right. Very tight hamstrings. Yeah, literally. Sometimes at my gym, there's actually, thank you for mentioning that. At my gym, they have a wide array of different things you can do. You can rock climb. You can do, Pilates type stuff. They've got sauna rooms, the whole deal, right? Spin classes. One of the things that they're trying to do, and this is a newer thing, so you may not be aware of it, right? But it's mostly known as the NSYTL.
Excuse me?
The Northside Youth Tumbling League.
Okay.
So it's a number of young children, some little people, but mostly young children that they're learning tumbling and gymnastics and that kind of thing. And the other day, true story, I was at my gym and they had a trampoline malfunction. And so I was there, and the trainer, Bob, that stretches me, that's always fascinated with the tightness of my hamstrings, he said, "Oh, Jake, can you just lay on this table for about 30 minutes? So I laid there and then just boing, boing, like one after the other, little kids, boing, and they could jump off of my hamstrings and do, air twirls and things like that. It was.
So what you're saying is we just
Derek
found,
Schultz was there.
What you're saying is, Jake, is we just found a new activity that we can add to the second golf outing, the Fan Invitational presented by Franciscan Health.
That is correct. And the early bird special is out there, by the way. Your chance to come out and support a great cause, helping out Franciscan Health and the Franciscan Health Foundation. All of us from the station will be there on April the 30th, 9 o'clock in the morning check-in. It was awesome last year when we did this. It was a great event. And not only was it a great event, but, Mo from Ohio came over for it. I mean, there was a lot of success with it. But this year we wanted to make sure to do it where at the beginning of the season, because, people have a lot of golf outings and a lot going on towards the end of the year and when kids are getting back in school. So 18 holes of golf, April the 30th, early bird special right now on the station website, 1075thefan.com. $25 off per person or $100 off per foursome right now with signing up for it.
I can't think of a better way to kick off, the month of May. Get to hang out with you on a golf course, get to ask you questions about, how the IndyCar season's going, kind of your thoughts going into the big month.
And
before you start doing Beyond the Bricks again.
That's
with Mike
right
Thompson.
around the time, just a couple of weeks before, we'll find out whether or not the Pacers are going to hold on to their pick.
Yeah.
Assuming that they're still in the same situation.
Point, yeah.
But Rick Carlisle yesterday, let's get to this. When he was on with the guys in the morning, Rick Carlisle was very open about his frustration, and he kind of doubled down on this last night after the game with Philadelphia. But this is what got the ball rolling because the NBA was he checkmated them into having to respond. Rick Carlisle yesterday on the Fan Morning Show, when talking about the situation of the Pacers being fined earlier this month, $100,000 for the NBA allegation of tanking against Utah.
Yeah, I put out a statement about it. I didn't agree with it. There was a league lawyer that was doing the interview that kind of unilaterally decided that Aaron Nesmith, who had been injured the night before and couldn't hold the ball, should have played in the game, which just seems ridiculous. And
during the interview process, I was not on it, but I heard details. We asked them if they wanted to talk to the doctors, our doctors, about it, because it's something that was documented by our doctors and trainers. They said no, they didn't need to. They talked to their doctors, who did not examine Aaron Nesmith, and we asked them if they wanted to talk to the kid, and they said no, they didn't need to. So this was shocking. This was shocking to me. And during the interview, they also asked if we'd considered medicating him to play in a game when we were 30 games under 500. So I was very surprised. Obviously didn't agree with it. This is really the first time I've gone into any detail about it, but that was the deal. And so, yeah, that was it.
Okay, the NBA responded yesterday with the following statement. This was initially reported by Scott Agnes. Tony East as well had this. Quote, Coach Carlisle's description of the process that went into the decision to find the Indiana Pacers is inaccurate. An independent physician led the medical review. In addition, the Pacers general manager and the team's senior vice president, sports medicine and performance, were interviewed as part of the process. The Pacers confirmed that it had provided all of the information requested by the league, and the team reported that an interview with Coach Carlisle or a team physician wasn't necessary, end quote. That does not clarify whether or not they spoke directly to or evaluated Aaron Nesmith. But either way, what I know is this, and I'm going to repeat what I said yesterday. The reality is, are the Indiana Pacers tanking? Are the Indiana Pacers intentionally trying to lose games? I don't believe that. Are the Indiana Pacers taking advantage of a unique season and situation to do a complete inventory of their roster and take advantage of playing players off the depth of their roster that normally would not play in games if it is a game that is listed as one that Indiana is putting forth their maximum effort to win? Yes. Did the Pacers set out at the beginning of the year and say, you know what? We were 2 quarters away from an NBA title. We got that close. And you know what? With all our chips in, and I'm saying this hypothetically if Tyrese Halliburton had never gotten hurt. If Halliburton had not gotten hurt and the Pacers had lost and come that close to winning an NBA title and fallen short, would the Pacers have said at the beginning of the year, here's what we're going to do. We could use some wing help. We need a 2D player with length above and beyond Benedict Matherin's skill set. And we see 3, if not 4 of them in this year's draft. Guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lose games. We're going to go out and we're going to put forth half effort. We're going to use weird lineups. We're going to bench players because they need 3 days off and load management and everything else. We're going to do all of that. That would be tanking. It's not what they did. They got 2 quarters from winning the NBA championship, and Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. And then, even with that, you look at it and say, well, if they can move Nembhard to the point, have him run specifically the point and maybe move Mathurin over to your full-time starter position, whatever it might be, we can still win 42 games and continue to build off of the playoff experience and get everybody excited and then come back and push all in. But Miles Turner surprised them and left. And yes, he surprised them and left. Was he justified in his decision? Maybe. But he surprised them and left. So then it was, okay, this year is going to be about the development of Benedict Mathurin, who got hurt. Not once, but twice. Legitimately hurt. Okay, that's okay. We'll use minutes for Obi Toppin, who was hurt, has a screw in his foot. Okay, that's okay. then we'll use Nembhard more in the backcourt with T.J. McConnell. Nembhard was hurt. Well, then we'll work Nesmith in. Nesmith initially was hurt. These were legitimate injuries to begin the year. So the Pacers got to a point in the season where, at no fault of theirs, not because they were tanking, because of the inability to be able to consistently put out a lineup, the Pacers lost games that then put them in position where you got to the point where you're like, now it is beyond repair because we're not going to make the playoffs. And so, yes, now we are in a situation where we can be much more conservative in our approach in bringing players back. We can be much more analytical in terms of who we're putting out on the floor. And so they go into a game now where you look at an Aaron Nesmith, and if he's hurt, you say to yourself, you know what? We'll play Ethan Thompson. We'll play Talon Peter. We'll play guys that normally would never have gotten opportunity this year, but why not go ahead and give them opportunity and chance to develop and let us see who they are and what they are? And if you want to call that tanking, I call it more futuristically strategic. And I'm not here to stand here and say this because I have a good relationship with the Pacers or because I was a ball boy in 1988 for the Pacers. I'm saying it 100% objectively by saying the frustration that fans and the National Basketball Association have is the fact that it appears as though the NBA selected two franchises that have the least national oomph to push back on the NBA. If the NBA had fined the Lakers for LeBron's load management or the Warriors for Steph Curry's load management, that would resonate from Savannah to Spokane, from Bangor, Maine to Phoenix, Arizona, because those are national brands and national names, and that's their national calling card. But if the NBA was wanting to set the precedent, make the example, send the message that they are a league of morals, scruples, and fair and balance across the board, what better way to do that than to be able to then go back to some of their partners and say, see, we take this seriously because we find Indiana and Utah, the two franchises that you can, when it's convenient, let people know that you address the situation, but do so without really harming a lot of your national fan base that has emotional invested interest. For the most part, if you're a fan of the Pacers or a fan of the Jazz, you are from Indiana or have a connection to the state, and the same is true for Utah. For the NBA to come out with that lame, sorry explanation, what that means is that Rick Carlisle, who more often than not is playing chess when other people are playing checkers, if you watch a game and you watch the way Rick Carlisle stands and observes the game while it's unfolding, he is seeing it from an analytic standpoint that otherwise I think a lot of coaches don't see. Does he make mistakes? Sure, of course. He went a long time without winning a playoff series. He ain't perfect. But in this case, he basically got out in front of it and he said the quiet part out loud. The NBA wanted us to basically give a guy a shot of cortisone or something along those lines. I'm not putting direct words into it, but when he says they asked us to medicate the player, they wanted him to do something to doctor to make Aaron Nesmith physically eligible to play. Okay? And they were saying, no, that's not the case. So in this situation, this to me very clearly is the NBA trying to make an example of the Pacers and the Pacers standing up for themselves and saying, go take it somewhere else. But I'll bet you that's the last time they find the Pacers. I'll bet it is. And why are you still getting at the Fieldhouse 17, 18, 19, 20,000 people per night? You're getting that because You have a fan base that understands the fact that it is situational as to why the Pacers are where they are. Are they going to benefit from it? And now do they have an invested interest in making sure that they land in the top 4? You bet your bottom line they do. You absolutely bet it. But they waited until the circumstance put them there, as opposed to themselves saying, we're just going to go out and do nothing but start 10 days for 2.5 months to get ourselves there. And I thought it was a brilliant checkmate move by Rick Carlisle, and it forced the NBA to have to make some sort of an announcement, and they made one that makes 0 sense.
The question I have is, why now? Like, why would you share all those details now? Like, I understand and I have a belief that Rick Carlisle has a solid, if not respectable, relationship with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. So, like, why now? Why would you make that comment now? And the other thing that stands out to me, Jake, in the NBA's response to this is that they had an independent physician lead the medical review. If that said independent physician is not talking with Rick Carlisle, is not talking with the head athletic trainer or an athletic trainer or the player, how the heck can he determine as an independent medical review that a player can or can't play?
Right. And in addition to that, the thing that jumps sour at me,
and they also don't deny the medicated part.
That's the part that, to me, is a really bad look for the NBA. That's a really bad look for the NBA. That looks like basically what you're saying is give the horse a smelling salt and send him back out. That's how that looks. And I'm going to go back to and I will stand on this mountaintop, screaming it from the mountaintops, convinced that I'm correct in this until someone says to me otherwise. And that simply is, and some of this in the vernacular of it and the specification of it and the categorization of it is beyond my intellectual capability. But the NBA during All-Star Week had some sort of a behind closed doors, publicly known, but the material of which was behind closed doors, like governor's meeting, and I'm using governors in air quotes, but a meeting with partnerships about the state of the union, if you will. And who was involved in that? CEOs of the sports gambling apps that have become a major financial lifeline to the NBA and to sports in general. And to be fair, I'm not saying that the gambling apps are all evil. That is a free will choice for adults in the United States to be able to accentuate their understanding, their appreciation, or their entertainment of games. And are there some folks that have an addiction to that, a challenge to that, or problems that are created because of those apps? Absolutely. Okay? But I do know that the gambling apps financially back and assist the gambling commission in the state of Indiana to help those that have an addiction. So it's not like they're just the evil empire. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is they pay a lot of money in now connected partnership to the NBA, broadcast partnerships of the NBA, in arena sponsorships of the NBA. And I, again, will repeat what I've said for a week straight, and that is those apps pay so much money that they want to absolutely make certain that their consumer feels confident that as a consumer, they are consuming or partaking in something that is, in fact, legitimate. And you can bet your hind rear, that's redundant, you can bet your backside that the NBA and its apps probably at the end of the year, when a team like Utah or a year ago, I'm trying to think of a year ago, Oklahoma City a couple of years ago, when they were just stockpiling draft picks and Oklahoma City was essentially tanking. I'll bet you $100. See what I did there? That the wagering on those teams dipped dramatically in March, April, and May versus what it was in October, November, December. Because people were like, I'm not going to wager on that game because I have no idea if that team's trying to win. So the NBA wants to make it very clear to you, the consumer, that yes, in fact, go ahead and get on that app and put down your $5 wager, put down your parlay, put down your teaser, because everything that you wager is definitely on the up and up. And it is the apps that put that pressure on the NBA, and the NBA had to respond. This is just my opinion. I'm not saying it factually. That's my opinion. My perception is that's exactly what happened.
And what makes it even worse, Jake, in my opinion, is that you just had this whole Chauncey Billups thing earlier this season.
And where'd that go?
Yeah, exactly.
Where'd that go? I mean, I agree with you. The NBA knew going into it, their rabbit ears were up and large because of what happened with Chauncey Billups and the away from basketball situation where he was indicted. And then you also had individual players on parlay scandals taking place. So the NBA had to get out in front of this hornet's nest, basically, and provide mesh wiring to everybody to say, look, so just so you don't get stung, we're making sure that we're protecting all of this.
Yeah, Jonte Porter getting banned for gambling on games.
Right.
And,
parlays and over-unders
Malik
and that kind of thing.
Terry Rozier connected to betting on player props. I forget the other guy's name that was with LeBron in Cleveland that had a big role in this as well, who had an idea about a game on LeBron playing before it was announced that he wasn't going to play. So he advised people to take the Bucks on the spread tonight because that's who the Lakers were playing at the time and LeBron wasn't going to play.
This gives the NBA, by coming out with those fines, it gives the NBA a counterpoint when people say like, oh man, the NBA, I can't get into that. The league's all rigged. The league's all rigged. And now the NBA can say, no, it's not. Chris Ballard spoke earlier today. Not only did he speak yesterday at the Combine, he spoke earlier today on the Fan Morning Show, and we will get to some of the comments that he had regarding the Colts, including one that I thought was very telling about leadership or lack thereof. We'll play it for you next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know what I think we need to play more of on this program?
What's that?
Now, what is this you're firing up here?
Rasputin.
This is. Do you enjoy this? This is kind of fun, right? I feel like I'm at Studio 54.
I don't know.
But what about the Weinsweiss? We haven't played that in a while, have we? Wasn't that our friend, the German techno star, when the Colts went to Germany?
Sva 3000 or whatever.
Can we play that? That we're getting in the mood for that, aren't we? I mean, it's almost Speedo season, right?
Schwinvath.
Do we happen to have that song?
It was Schwinvath 2000.
Yeah. That guy, that fella does that song about the Weinsweiss, which is German for sweat. Isn't that what it was? It was just a song about sweat. Here's why I mentioned this, Eddie, because here we are collectively, this generation gap between us, right? And right here. And yet your taste in music and pop culture and then mine, it all comes together right here in the understanding and the bond of this horrific sound. Again, it sounds a little bit like the Star Wars Cantina, right?
Yeah.
This sounds like R2-D2 porn, to be honest with you. But then doesn't the fella all of a sudden just say something? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay.
I feel bad for the YouTube because they don't get to hear this.
Well, I don't know that I'd feel bad for them at all on that. So last night I'm at the Pacer game, and a guy taps me on the shoulder sitting behind me. Jake, I have a question. So I turn around. Yep. And he says, how many movies are you up to now that Eddie needs to watch? And then he said, I hear a lot of times when you'll reference something, and I can tell that you assume that Eddie or the younger guys know what you're talking about. And those of us that are also old, his words, can feel your pain. I said, well, no pain.
Now, how does it make you feel that somebody bothered you in the middle of a game to ask you a question about me?
It means they listen to the show, so I was cool with it, right?
Yeah.
But the point I'm getting at, flippancy aside, is this. In that situation, I'm not going to say it's about leadership, right? But if there are areas where, sometimes when you're in a situation and you're the older of the two, you're the veteran, you try to point things out. Now, Eddie, first off, you are not my subservient. So it's not as though it's my role. I'm not your boss, right? But on this program, I'm the older of the two of us. And so it's not my desire per se, and I think you'll back me up on this. It's not like I call you once a week and say, here's what you need to work on, or here's what we need to do differently, or here's what I need to do, whatever, right?
At least to watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You told me about that.
I did, and that paid off for you.
It did, yeah. What was the other one that we learned the other night that I haven't watched, or you learned about?
16 Candles?
No, we were on the phone talking about it. And you're like, oh, dude, you'll love that more than Fast Times.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Nerds, because Lewis passed away. Lewis passed away, unfortunately, self-inflicted, it appears. The actor that played Lewis on Revenge of the Nerds 2 days ago. Great movie. But what I'm getting at is this. When it comes to roles of leadership and exhibiting leadership or presenting leadership, there are a couple of ways to do it. And one is to just say, hey, listen, I've been here before, so, here's what you need to do, or here's what worked for me, and so therefore maybe you can learn from. Or in my case, there are plenty of areas, Eddie, where I could say, I hope you can learn from this because I mishandled it. I don't think about things in areas where I did things the right way. I think more often about areas where I fell short of my own expectation or the expectation that was placed upon me. And so therefore you're like, maybe you can learn from that. But there are ways to lead. And in sports, there are ways to lead. if you were in a locker room, and I mentioned this earlier, I think the biggest thing that has hurt the Colts, over the last 10 years is that they have failed to put proper leaders in leadership position. You know, Jeff George once said to me, one of the most clairvoyant moments of an epiphany that has been shared to me from an athlete standpoint. Jeff George, and I think he might have even said it on this radio show, but Jeff George told me that one of the hardest things for him was when he was a rookie in the NFL. It was very hard for him because at the quarterback position, you've always been in a position to lead. He was a consensus number one recruit in high school out of Warren Central and a two-time state champion. Then he went to Purdue, where he had to play immediately as a freshman, but then transferred to Illinois, and by the time he got on the field, was a more veteran player, and then was a leader for Illinois that went to, and won big-time games for them, and then was the number one draft pick by the Colts. But one of the things that he said that he was very uncomfortable with that was a disadvantage was he's like, look, I was 21, 22 years old as the quarterback, and I'm looking in the huddle at guys that have been in the league for 10 years. What am I going to say to them? How seriously are they going to take me? Anthony Richardson is a young quarterback that has never really been in that situation to begin with. He was not like some huge multi-state champion recruit in high school. And at the University of Florida, he was not some consensus Heisman contender. He was in the mix and in the conversation, partially just based on where he played. But he comes into the situation here where he's learning how to be a professional, let alone having to be a leader. And if you look at the positions where leadership is most important in the NFL, it's quarterback, probably middle linebacker, and then just based on whoever is the most tenured. And for the Colts, for the last decade, the positions where they've had their best players have been guard, running back. At quarterback, they've not had a natural leader per se in the fact that, yes, they had Phillip Rivers. Yes, they had Joe Flacco. Yes, they had Gardner Minshew. But all of them were passerbys in the night, and everyone on the roster knew that. DeForest Buckner is a great player, and I think literally is a legit man's leader, no question. But from an injury standpoint, he's been away from the team in large chunks for the majority of years that he's been here. And Zaire Franklin, at the linebacker position, is a leader based on the fact that he's the eyes and ears and quarterback of the defense. However, Zaire Franklin, I think, and I like Zaire Franklin a great deal, but I think Zaire Franklin got himself in a pickle when the Colts were not having a great year, but he statistically was. He sought the opportunity and the spotlight that was on him because of the great year the Colts were having. Zaire Franklin utilized that platform and those eyeballs to promote Zaire Franklin. And when you have a roster and a team that is scratching and clawing their way to a subpar, disappointing non-playoff season, and you're utilizing the last 10% of that year to go on your podcast and on your social media and openly campaign towards getting yourself to a Pro Bowl, it's a bad look because leadership comes in a couple different ways. It comes in ways of either just leading by the example. It comes in ways of being the vocal guy that speaks up when others don't, or being willing to fall on the sword that others aren't. Or it comes in the way strictly of going about your business every day and making sure that people are aware of the fact that you're doing what is best for the common goal. And while I'm not saying Zaire Franklin doesn't do that, coming out on the podcast and talking about the Pro Bowl demerits what work may have been done otherwise. So this morning when Chris Ballard came on the morning show, he was asked the question, when it comes to this team that has continuously fallen short for basically a decade over the time of the Ballard tenure, one thing that has been consistent, the only consistent in the tenure of Chris Ballard has been inconsistency. So he was asked this morning, Chris Ballard, general manager of the Colts, question for you is this. Is this a locker room and a team that has a problem with leadership?
That's a fair question. Shane and I we've had discussions about that. Because we have really, look, y'all go through our locker room. We have really good dudes. They care. They want to win. They do everything they can in their power to do the right things. We have to make sure that they're getting, leaders, we got to help them lead sometimes, if that makes sense. We all have growth to do, even I have growth to do in that area, and they do. And we need to help them grow along the way, too, of things that we want done to make sure that is getting spread through the locker room. I think Shane does a really good job now, but, just at this time, because of the results, it hadn't been what we wanted. So we've got to make sure that we're leading them in the right direction, too.
You expect Zaire Franklin back?
We'll see. Love Zaire. I think, like, my relationship with him, he's very honest and he's very strong-willed. Darius was very similar, Leonard. And usually good players are like that. So we'll see how it plays out. When football, I'll tell you this, when football's over, Zaire Franklin's going to be a star in whatever he decides to do in life. He is smart. He is extremely mentally tough. He's everything you want in a player in terms of makeup. Are
you a fan of the podcast?
Needless to say, Zaire and I have had some discussions about the podcast. Look, here's what I do like. I love that he's passionate about what could be next in life.
So that, to me, sounds like essentially what Ballard is saying is that Zaire Franklin, some of the great things that make him a very good player, little undersized. Some of his numbers maybe are situational or schematic because things are kind of funneled his way, but also a great competitor, which can be of benefit on the field and at times can be a challenge to deal with off the field. And I think he is a nice dude, Zaire Franklin. I've met him a few times, and I certainly know of some of the philanthropic things he does. I think a good dude. But that was interesting to me because when Kevin said, do you think he'll be back? And he says, we'll see. He also said, we'll see on Anthony Richardson. And, we'll see on that, right? Where that goes.
Yeah, but I thought, Jake, in the morning show interview, we finally got some clarity on a guy that you and I certainly haven't talked a ton about just because obviously the two big free agents is where the eyes are at right now in terms of Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones.
And he did say that things look to be going in the right direction with those two, but go ahead.
Right, but we finally got, I think, some indication on the future of Nick Cross as well.
Nick Cross, a guy that was drafted, young player, uber athletic when they drafted him, had to kind of learn how to play the position, but I think has learned to play the position at a very high level.
One of the rare guys in the Ballard era that he's traded up for to get, and he gave up a future third.
And now, Ben, again, an improved, you can see the marked player. Here is Chris Ballard on Nick Cross.
He does mean a lot. We have a lot of moving parts here, so we'll see how it works out. We've had talks with his representative. I know him well, and I'm proud of Nick, and I'm happy for Nick. And look, sometimes, like for players, and I tell them this when they're rookies, like they're going to come a point when you and I don't agree and you don't like me because of finances. Like there's this big pie, and we can slice it up, and give that piece of the pie. And somebody might be willing to give you a bigger piece of the pie. And if that happens, good. We've both done our jobs. We've done our job developing you, and you've done an unbelievable job taking the coaching and getting better, and each and every year. And you deserve this opportunity. So we'll see what the future holds with Nick. I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. He made it to free agency, and he's made it on a high note. So we'll see how that works out.
And again, Ballard has always said that he prefers to take care of his own, right?
Yeah.
And reward those that merit being rewarded.
Yeah, but to me that sounds like a guy who isn't going to have, the resources to offer Nick Cross.
That may be because Cross might have played himself into a good deal elsewhere, and they do have some depth in that area.
Yeah, when you're talking about the, a certain slice of the pie, and you mentioning there at the end, he's made it to free agency, talking about how, if we're at a point where your representatives and you are mad at me because I'm not giving you what you think you deserve, and there's another team out there that could potentially offer you more money. Like, to me, I'm just kind of reading between the lines there. It's like, okay, we're going to be having a new starting safety. And Chris Ballard is next to Cam Bynum next year for the Colts.
Hey, Jake.
Hunter Wohler? That's the bigger question.
Hunter Wohler's another big one.
Yeah.
Remember, he was hurt, but he was playing at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Wally, and I know it's corner, not defensive back, but that backfield, they have some guys coming back from injury that if they come back at the level that they were anticipated, it could be good. Hey, Jake. Want to let you know Revenge of the Nerds is not actually available on any streaming service. It, along with Porky's, which, by the way, was produced by Mel Simon, have been shadow banned due to content issues, and no streaming service will touch it. You literally can't even buy it from Amazon. The issue in Revenge of the Nerds is related to consent in the Funhouse. Okay. That makes sense. But, well, I guess it does, it is interesting that things, and I could see that being the case in 16 Candles as well, if that is the case. Appreciate the heads up on that. So
I'll just have to watch it whenever I come over to see Shawshank.
I was going to say, I'll have to find it somewhere. I mean, I probably have an old VHS tape. Now, we had a VHS tape when I was in middle school of Revenge of the Nerds, but if you would pause a tape long enough, it would kind of like the video would get a little bit distorted because the tape would thin down from being paused all of a sudden. So there was a particular scene, Booger makes a request on the camera work on something they're watching, and as a result, we froze it a lot when I was in the 8th grade. I'll leave it simply at that. JMV is here. Crossover next, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141. Over 100 years in service for Love Heating and Air. 4 generations deep, an official Heil heating and cooling dealer. We will see what John has lined up for the big program next.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, so I'm being told that maybe I distributed bad info here. We'll see, okay? Is, in fact, Revenge of the Nerds available to buy off Amazon? Somebody said, like, you literally can't even buy it right now. And let's see on this. We gotta get to the bottom of this because it is a fabulous movie. There are definitely things with some movies that you look at now and you're like, whoa, man, like I don't know that I, at the time, we're a more sensitive and aware culture than we were at one time. And there are some things that you're like, man, and I can see what was brought up from Revenge of the Nerds, how that would be something that places would want to stay away from today. But let's look here. Revenge of the Nerds. You know what? I hate to break this to Gary Gregg, but Revenge of the Nerds, all of the sequels are available, but Revenge of the Nerds, it does not appear, is available to be purchased on Prime. So that is correct. It does not look like Prime has Revenge of the Nerds able to be purchased. JMV has just walked in and arrived. Big show lined up, John?
Big show. Hey, Revenge of the Nerds, Betty. So was it ever odd that Betty, when he was in that mask and they were in the carnival?
The fun house. That's what we were just talking about. Apparently that's why you can't stream it now.
Oh, because of Betty's nudity right there?
Because of the lack of consent.
Oh, yeah. There was zero consent whatsoever.
Correct.
He just kind of popped his grill in there, and she was, I guess it's a good thing she was pretty satisfied at that moment.
Betty thought it was Stan.
It's weird.
Stan Gable.
Did you ever think that the stuff they actually cut out in our favorite movies of the 80s would be the stuff that they would cut out? You know what I mean? Now
Right.
it's kind of.
Well, there are a lot of things
Yeah.
that you look back on now, though, and you're like, whoa, really? Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. She ends up, I don't want to spoil the movie for Eddie here. Betty ends up falling for Lewis, though.
She does. She does.
You know?
Betty, when they were going through the sorority, though.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. I
Yeah.
I went to that. My mom took me to see that.
You did tell me that once.
My mom took me to see that.
The scene where I'll just say that, Booger makes a request of the camera work.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's awesome.
I know. Well,
that had to be fun with your mom.
The first time I saw Fast Times at Ridgemont High was with my mom. And when Hamilton started to flog the dolphin,
right?
She turned and said, "Do you do
Does
that?"
anyone ever knock anymore?
Excuse me.
She asked me if I did that. And of course, I said like 3 times a day.
that probably wasn't uncomfortable at all, right? You know what? You know
Do
what
you do that?
You know what you should have said to her?
Was my heart beating? Yes.
I don't know, Mom. Get Phoebe Cates to come over swimming, and we'll find out, right?
It is. Well, it's like the Seinfeld episode. I mean, you got one of those, so you probably do.
Right.
So, yeah.
The competition, right?
I think I was well ahead of the Seinfeld episode right there. Hey, IU last night. What a mess. You went?
I went to the Pacer game.
Oh, you went to the Pacer
Yeah.
game. Oh, I saw you post a photograph.
Somebody sent me the picture. They're like, look at this. And that was with
I don't
3 minutes
blame
till
anybody
tip.
not going to sit in the balcony to watch 9 minutes of absolutely awful offense like
Correct.
that in the second half. So
It's brutal.
Do we know at all? Is this a pass because it's your number one for Darren DeVries, or is this a pass because nobody gives a crap and everybody loves Signetti, the IU
I think the
football
latter.
program?
I jokingly said last night to my friends, we talk about like IU basketball, which coach like did in IU basketball, Sampson, Miller, and I'm like, maybe it was Signetti, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Signetti's the coach that now it's like people are just like, yeah, well, wake me up when football season starts. I mean,
it is incredible. Why can't that was Northwestern. It's not like we're talking Michigan or even Purdue, which they did beat at home, but Northwestern has won their, 6 straight times?
Yeah. Yep.
That is incredible.
6 straight losses to Northwestern.
Well, how many times in a row at Assembly Hall? It's like 4 times in a row at Assembly Hall.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Incredible. I mean, that John, that was inconceivable.
This is not the quiz bowl, for God's sake.
Right.
It's basketball.
The brain game.
Inconceivable is right. Maybe once upon a time they would get close and, Northwestern, a double overtime loss, and they were really close. But, yeah, this is embarrassing. And I don't know why. I guess it's his first year. You get a pass. I don't know whether the guy can coach at that level of basketball.
I think because of when
or
they
not.
had to put the roster together is the one area where he gets a pass. That's it, though. I mean, you wouldn't say that they're necessarily playing better now than they were at the beginning of the year.
Were there guys they didn't get because of when they had to put the roster together? Is that why?
I would think. I mean, it was late, right?
What's Ryan Carr gonna? Is Ryan Carr gonna bring in guys? He's the Andrew Luck of this program, right?
And that's what I was asking Rab Johnson. I'm looking forward to talking to Ryan to ask him this. Of, is this a Darren DeVries attached hire, or is Ryan Carr there regardless of who the coach is? That kind of thing.
Now, this is strictly for Chad Buchanan, but I like to make fun of all the Iowa influence in basketball going on around, because sometimes you think that Iowa invented basketball around here. Of course. Clearly it hasn't.
At least in Bloomington it hasn't, right?
Clearly, we like our Iowa folks around here a great deal. Shout out to Chad Buchanan.
I
don't think
made-right
the state
sandwiches.
of Iowa, I don't think you guys created basketball. We did.
All right, John's up next. What's on the big show?
That's a good question. There's something what's going on? Still the combine going on? We lucked out, didn't have to go today.
I know. I was supposed to be there Friday, but I'm off the hook now.
Well,
you had Shane on yesterday, right?
Shane was on yesterday. I got 5-word answers. I had 35 questions asked. I had 35 questions loaded rapid fire with 5-word answers. So I got 5 minutes of content.
35 questions took 12 minutes.
35 questions of 5 minutes of content. That is incredible. I don't know if that's ever been done before.
By the way, reminder, April 30th, it is the Fan Invitational Golf Outing presented by Franciscan Health, helping out the Franciscan Health Foundation, and the early bird for signups right now is in effect. $25 off per person, $100 off per foursome. If you want to come out April 30th, get into the full swing of the golf season at the Legends Golf Club. Had a fun time last year with that, and we look forward to that again. All right, John's up next. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to